It had large eyes. It had a very small, very spindly, sort of weak-looking body. It also had a larger head. I know what that looks like and what that sounds like. Welcome everybody, I am Kat and this is Vibrational You. This video is going to be the part 2 video to my astral projection series, and it's just an opportune time to do the video. I just had a stage 1 OBE last night, which is interesting. I don't usually have that type of out-of-body experience, or at least not in many years. But it was an excellent refresher. So I'm going to take the opportunity to use that experience to talk about some things. The first video I did was really about how to reach astral states, sort of my journey getting into astral states, and sort of some top tips and tricks I have for getting yourself there if you're interested in taking that journey. I will link that video in the description if you're interested in checking it out. For those of you that this is the first video you're seeing, I am Kat, and I am a longtime astral traveler and out-of-body experience haver. I started doing this when I was about 12 years old. And this video is going to be focusing on sort of what happens when you first get out of your body. I kind of call it like stage 1 astral projection, and what that sort of feels like, and some of the things to expect, and sort of how to counter some of the things to expect. In kind of a stage 1 scenario, you will feel sort of a sucking or a pop or some sort of sensation that indicates that you are out of your body. So for me, I would sit up out of my body. This is what happened last night. And the whole environment, it will be the environment you're in. So for me, I was in bed in my bedroom, and it is my bedroom, my bed, except for the entire environment. You can feel the vibration and everything. It all feels like it's humming and moving the air, all of the particles in the air. It feels like standing inside of a vibrator. The reason for this, and really the reason that I'm sitting up and actually physically getting out of bed, in other stages of out of astral travel, there really is more like a floating. You can go straight up through the ceiling. You're far more disseminated as a consciousness. In a stage 1 experience, what the human waking ego personality does is it still sort of forms a version of your body around you. So it's not the solid state version of your body. In fact, in a stage 1 experience, you will be able to turn around and see your physical body still there. But it is still forming up enough energy, enough molecules around what is usually your body to help that waking ego still feel some stability and sense of safety, some sense of normalcy when you first get out of your body. And that humming and vibrating feeling that happens all around there is enough of your physical sensation self still embodied around you that you still get the sensations, but it is disseminated enough that it gives you the capability of sensing things you don't normally in a solid state, like the vibration of the air, the vibration of all of the little particles, dust particles, everything that's in the air. The empty spaces that we normally experience as empty we suddenly feel are completely full of vibration and in fact matter, things that actually are that we just don't normally sense in our physical bodies. And so it can feel that vibration feeling, and it can also feel heavy or sluggish or difficult to move through, sort of like moving through molasses. Your response times are going to feel kind of slow and sluggish. And again, it's just because there's nothing there, and you are in a disseminated state enough to have to pass through that vibration and feel yourself passing through that vibration. Now, for me last night, I sat up and got out of my body, turned around and checked to see that my body was still there, and immediately started to feel like I couldn't see. I felt like I was blind or I was in the dark. And this happens sometimes at first in this first stage state. And it happened for me last night because it's been a long time since I've been in this first stage state that there was, once again, enough of my physical form present that the normal way I would sense in this state wasn't working quite right. And when I felt like, what is this? Why is it? Why can't I see? I got one of my guides came through, a voice came through and said, open your eyes, because I hadn't realized that I had had my eyelids closed in that sort of astral form. I'm not used to having that much of myself formed around me anymore. And that's really interesting. I'm glad I had this experience so that I could recall some of the things to say. I had forgotten that that can happen. And so I opened my eyes and started observing the environment. And sure enough, there was another personality there, another entity that was in my doorway. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about coming across other personalities in astral states. Because if you do this and it starts to happen, there's undoubtedly at some point you will start to come across other personalities. And it's important to talk about the difference between what people usually call thought form personalities. Um, this is usually referred to as like sleep paralysis demons or subconscious fears manifesting, or a long time ago it used to be called incubus and succubus. There's a lot of different names for this phenomena. It's a pretty common thing. People sometimes even call them shadow people because they can look like black figures just kind of standing there, and they can feel oppressive and frightening. um that type of and I will probably do a separate video about sleep paralysis and sleep paralysis demons specifically. But that type of a personality can feel very frightening and scary if you come across one, but they can be commanded away. So if you have a calm state when that happens, and probably you won't at first because it can feel very frightening, but they can be, actually, that type of a personality can be commanded away. Go away. I don't want to deal with you. Goodbye. If you treat them like they're not real and they're not a threat, then they will disseminate and go away. They don't have the momentum to maintain themselves without your validity input. I hope that's the right word. Yeah. Those types of personalities do not have enough momentum on their own to maintain their form and their presence without your energy, essentially. So if you deny them, they will go away. Now, the type of personality I came across last night in my room was not this type of personality. The personality that was standing in my doorway, it was a non-physically focused personality, which means that it is not a consciousness construct that comes from a physical reality, but the consciousness is close enough to human consciousness that it's communicatable to some degree. It is sentient, it does contemplate, it's not like coming across an animal. It does have sentience and is obviously capable of communicating. This personality construct does view things differently, though, views things from a broader perspective. Some levels of non-corporeal reality view things on a much bigger, much broader scale, looking at many variables, many probability fields, taking in a lot more sense data. What people usually refer to as angels and guides and such come from a type of non-physical reality where the point of view is just much broader. It's much more information coming in at once. And that personality has the capability of processing or understanding big chunks of information all at once. I know many of you have experienced probably getting a download where you get like just this whole big block, this chunk of information at one time, like a big knowing all at once. And then sort of the human part of the personality is sort of having to scramble to put an understanding on that knowing, usually integration, right? That type of download, that big chunk of information, is a standard sort of communication in these broader perspective layers of reality. The personality that I'm witnessing, what that vibration is translating to me as visual data, right? Because everything that we see, we are interpreting the vibration through our senses. And for humans, for physically focused humans, we always translate that into some sort of a physical data output. So for those who have the ability to see, they will visually see something there when they're translating vibration. But we always translate it into some sort of physical sense data because it's what makes sense to our experience. So what I saw standing in my doorway was a non-physically focused personality. So it had a very small, very spindly, sort of weak-looking body, but a humanoid consciousness, a sentient consciousness, so humanoid in shape, and perceiving things in a much bigger or broader way. So it had large eyes and the capability of processing the broader perspective knowing. So it also had a larger head. And the reason I said it like that is because I know what that looks like and what that sounds like to people. And I think it's important to understand how we translate that vibrational data and the reason why we see what people call aliens in the sort of format that we do. Because that's what it looked like standing in my doorway. I know how that sounds, and it is not uncommon for people who have abduction or close encounter experiences to report either waking up in bed or being woken from a sleep and finding figures such as this description standing at the foot of their bed or standing in their room. In case you encounter something like that, I wanted you to have everyone should have the base information of why you're translating the data that way, why it's showing up visually like that for you, and that this kind of a structure or a physical look to something might apply to a lot of different kinds of consciousness. Say it well. What are you trying to say? Not all aliens are the same species, and it's not necessarily, I don't want anyone to panic or freak out if they see something like that standing around. In this instance, the personality that was standing in the doorway stopped and looked at me, and I introduced myself and said hi, and it said hi back. And we had kind of a momentary pleasantries until the communication became difficult because it was actually what I translated as speaking too fast for me to understand. And so I said, slower, can you slower, please? And it was like, oh, okay. But it was like the tip off to it that something was off. Because when it slowed down, what it said is, I think we should be careful or quiet because of that very tired one over there, and pointed at my body on the bed. And I was like, she won't wake up unless she has some reason to. And that was when the personality that I was interacting with realized that I was not behaving appropriately to their way of behavior. It would be sort of like, have you ever heard the stories or the encounters of people who've actually interacted with the Men in Black or come across doppelgangers or anything like that, where it looks like a human until you examine it more closely and realize the mannerisms, the behaviors are off. There's just something not human about it. There's stories like that out there about that kind of thing. This was that kind of encounter, except for reverse, in that this entity recognized another corporeal entity, but it became very swiftly apparent that I was not behaving right. I was the uncanny valley in this instance. And at that point, it did approach me and start fading my consciousness and trying to push me back down into the bed. it was not a violent or aggressive action, or at least that's not the energy that I got out of it. It was not an attack. It was more like shooing me back to where I go. That's not an uncommon experience. Many of the types of personalities that you'll encounter are not really used to humans being conscious during that kind of state. And so they will sort of either avoid you or try to shoo you back to where you go, where you're supposed to be. At any rate, I did end up back in my body and waking up. So I think it's useful to be able to have some sort of guideline for telling different kinds of non-corporeal personalities apart. And the three major ones that are the easiest sort of categories to tell is you will end up with the sort of sleep paralysis. I call them fragment personalities personally. The sort of shadow people, sleep paralysis demon, that sort of a shadow personality. And if you can command them away, then you can do that. They do sort of appear looking shadowy or like dark figures, incomplete figures. And really, what you're translating there is the incomplete data of a consciousness. It's not a fully formed personality. That's why I call them fragment personalities. You will end up with the sort of very alien feeling personality, where there feels like there is a broad difference in understanding or a broad difference in communication. Something is not quite right there. There's a misunderstanding happening. And then you can also come across what people usually call angels or spirit guides or ascended masters. And those types of personalities will be very easy to tell because that type of a personality is trained and knows to emanate feelings of love and safety and calm. They can influence the way you're feeling. And so you will feel very peaceful and loved and safe and calm working with a personality like that. And the communication, the flow of information is way easier, way more fluid, much more like interacting with a human personality. And really, it's because they are used to working with humans, and many of them used to incarnate as humans at one time. So that data is available to them, and they have a lot more of a natural feeling interaction with them. With the more alien type of personalities, I personally have never come across one that was physically dangerous in any kind of way. I know that there have been obviously a lot of reports of stuff like that happening, but I've never experienced anything like that. And like I said, it's important to keep in mind that while they may appear to look like what our kind of standard definition of what an alien looks like, there are translated vibrational reasons why they kind of look that way. And that basic vibrational pattern could be applying to a lot of different types of personality constructs. Many different kinds of consciousness exist out there. We are not even remotely alone. And so there isn't necessarily a reason to be afraid or panic, but in any case, if you feel at all uncomfortable at any point during an astral journey, all you really have to do is will it, and you will be right back in your body and out of that state. There is a strong energetic connection to the physical body, especially in this sort of a stage one experience where you have not ventured very far from home, or you have not ventured very far from your current frequency. So it's very easy to return back to your body if you, for any reason, feel uncomfortable. I certainly did when I felt this entity pushing in on me. I was like, all right, nope, bye. So yeah, that was my out-of-body experience last night, and in general, my experience of a stage one OBE. If you have had similar experiences and you want to share, go ahead, feel free to drop me a comment, or even if your experiences were really different, leave me a comment. I love to hear them. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. I'll probably do another video talking about different stages of astral travel, getting a little bit further away from home, and not just down the block to go see what your friend is doing next door, but other layers of reality to go explore and take a look at. And yep, this is my personal weirdness on display. So like and subscribe, I guess, if you're into it and you want to hear more about astral travel and other non-corporeal personalities. And we will see you later. Can you tell I feel a little bit nervous talking about it out loud? Sounds crazy. Today's fair, right?